Hey, it's Doug Gottlieb Show here on Fox Sports Radio, live from Radio Row, and you hear him every week. You hopefully download his podcast. It's awesome. You follow on Facebook, which is even more awesome because then you get to see his facial reactions when he's just kind of spitting fire after football games. He's our good friend, John Middlekauff, who joins us. I remember when we were talking about the season coming in that you were like, look, dude, Niners are legit. They just got dudes. And in a league where everybody has some talent. Is it crazy to say they have the best depth of talent on a roster in the NFL? Is that an overstatement?
Yeah, it'd be right up there. I'd say top 4 or 5. I mean,
who are the others?
The Vikings have a legit roster.
Yes. Ravens?
Yeah.
Not as much.
You're right. I mean, the Niners could be really, really freaking high. The Cowboys, in theory, should be pretty good. Patriots, probably not as much this year. You'd say the Chiefs, when healthy, pretty good.
Yeah.
But, yeah, the Niners topped. When you've been bad, Doug, for 4 or 5 straight years, you started accumulating some high picks.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's like one of those, the cliche is that things that make us, that don't break us make us stronger. Well, last year, think of what happened last year. It gave them another year to kind of prep. It gave them better draft picks, right? They wouldn't have gotten,
part of it was luck. He tore his ACL,
That's what I'm saying. It's bad luck. But the bad luck
benefited him. Jimmy even mentioned it, right? I think a couple weeks ago.
It gives Jimmy more time to totally understand the offense, but it gives them more time to figure out who they like, who they don't like. And then they go out and draft Nick Bosa and Deebo Samuel.
Yeah, changes them.
Changes them. Yeah, Deebo Samuel's size and speed and versatility, and then Nick Bosa is probably the best talent in the draft.
Yeah.
Right? They have no shot at either of those guys if that doesn't happen.
Well, I think sometimes, too, when you have a new coach come in, they like getting rid of all the former players and – to a detriment to their future success. Like when Harbaugh got to the Niners, now the players were a little better, but he incorporated all the guys that were already there, the Willises, the Bowmans. I mean, that was easy. But Joe Staley, Frank Gore,
right.
Vernon Davis, Crabtree, and then added. Kyle did the same thing with guys like Eric Armstead, who I would have gotten rid of. DeForest Buckner was easy to keep. Eric Armstead was not. Jimmy Ward was not. And those two guys are starters on arguably the best defense in the league. And then they had some misses. That first draft with Solomon Thomas, not a good player. Reuben Foster was just a disaster personally. Right. And they just flowed pretty well off it. Now, a big reason was this curveball they got out of left field with Belichick, called Kyle Shanahan and asked him, do you want Jimmy Garoppolo? For a second-round pick, no negotiation.
Yeah.
So Kyle's like, yeah, let me think. And really the only reason he had to think about it, just he was a free agent, and they said, well, there's a thing called the franchise tag. And the deal was done pretty quickly. But that, to me, ultimately, because without a quarterback, they might have been competitive. They would have got Kirk Cousins. And that would have 1,000,000% happened. If Jimmy Garoppolo was not traded to the Niners, Kirk Cousins would have been on the Niners. And the Niners are not here now. Now, they might have become a good team, and they could have become a version of Minnesota, but they would have had a ceiling, kind of like the Chiefs with Alex Smith. And I think Jimmy –
or the Vikings with Kirk Cousins.
Or the Vikings with Kirk Cousins. That's exactly. And it might not even look as good because they got Diggs and Thielen, and the Niners don't. So that helps him out, and Dalvin Cook. But the Niners have a good run game. I think that Jimmy adds an element to Kyle's game where he can use a robot quarterback, like Matt Ryan's the best version, and win the MVP. Matt Schaub for a long time in Houston, even Cousins. But Jimmy has an athletic ability, which I think you kind of need in this modern-day NFL, because the pass rushers the last 10 years have maintained elite players coming into the draft, where the tackles and the guards have not. There hasn't been as many top offensive linemen coming to the NFL the last 5-6 years.
Why do you think that is? I have a hypothesis, but I want to use.
Well, I think it's a combination of factors. The biggest thing probably is the offenses in college. You're just not coaching it as much because I still think the human beings, the size, the same size guys are coming in. You see guys get drafted that are 6'4", 300 pounds, but maybe they're just not as physical, repping it every day for 3 or 4 years in college.
I don't know.
I don't really have a theory. I just know it's stopped.
Can I give you mine?
Go.
Okay, it's the same reason. Like Tua is going to be the first left-handed quarterback in more than half a decade, right? The last guy to throw a left-handed touchdown pass was Dez Bryant.
That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, and so what we started talking. I started talking with who was I talking with? Chris Sims. And he was left-hand quarterback. And I was like, where'd all lefties go? And he was like,
pitch.
I don't know. And I said, probably baseball, right? So the idea is, I think lefties, especially taller lefties that would have been developing the quarterbacks, now their parents are sending them to play baseball, right?
Yeah.
And then I would guess that if you're 6'4" to 6'6", and you're athletic, you don't play tight end. You play offensive line. right?
Yeah.
You're not putting on that extra weight, not building your body. And so, yes, they still have – and then I think you combine the college offenses, which are all spread-oriented, very, very little pro schemes.
Well, Joe Staley's a good example. College tight end,
Right.
recruited out of high school, was like a track athlete in high school because he was like 200 pounds. And I would imagine when he's older, when he's 45, he'll be skinny.
Yes.
Skinny version of himself, like 230 pounds, something like Joe Thomas. He's not naturally that size. It's hard to maintain it. I can't imagine what it's like to just force feed yourself.
Right.
But you have to have it to anchor. So, that probably plays a part. I do think the spread offenses, though, just because the body types are coming to the NFL, they're just not good. Now, we've always had misses at every position in all of sports. I mean, it's just the nature of some guys, you just get weeded out. The competition gets better. But the offensive lineman coming into the league the last 3 or 4 years has been abysmal. But think about the pass rushing talent. Remember last year it was like 20 guys in the first two rounds went as pass rushers.
So why is that?
It's funner to play, maybe?
I'd say it's more fun to play. And, if you're athletic at that size, they put you on defense, they put you at tight end.
Yeah.
Whereas, 10 years ago, they put you at left tackle, and you can make a ton of money. Whereas now it's maybe more the kids that have the fat.
Well, I think Eric Armstead, when he came out of SAC, he was a big-time high school basketball player.
Right, I know.
And he had these great feet, and they tried him at left tackle right away at Oregon, and it just wasn't going to work. Because there's a grunt mentality to it, one. And even if you make it and become a superstar in the NFL, there are no stats. It's not sexy. You're not the first guy to get interviewed, even though you make good money. And there is an innate toughness that you have to be good at the position. So there's going to be a small percentage of guys that truly can do it, right? It's not a fun position to play.
John Middlekauff, our guest in the Doug Gottlieb Show on Fox Sports Radio. How much did 28-3 change Kyle Shanahan as a coach?
I thought it would a lot, but I heard him talk about it after maybe a couple days after the NFC Championship. And he mentioned that, a lot of people thought like I was going to completely change my strategy. He's like, I look back, there were 2 plays that if I could do over. It wasn't my whole philosophy. We were rolling. We weren't running the ball well. It was just 2 plays that he goes specifically. So do I need to start from scratch? A lot of people thought like I had to hit the reset button. He's like, no. And it turns out he knows what he's doing. It was just the perfect combination. Not all his fault, right? They gave up 31 points.
Right.
But I think there was a situation in the game. I can't remember what series it was, but they were in field goal range, which would have made it 11 points. Instead, they got pushed back and stayed 8 points. And he's like, if we would have stayed in field goal range, and that was the play call that led to a holding penalty and got him out of field goal range. Like, if we get it, and even the Patriots have admitted, if they kick the field goal, I mean, it's impossible. Time's not on their side. So I don't think it really faced them at all. I actually think it speaks to just how dominant of a coach he really is. Like, think about his high end. When he's on, he took Belichick to the shed. I mean, I remember we all were watching that game on the couch going, this is insane.
Not just that. Yeah, I put my kids to my kids were like, maybe they can come back. Like, they ain't coming back.
No.
They can't stop them, right? And, I mean, look what he did in Washington, when they had RG3 that first year. And he was running an offense that wasn't his offense, but he ran more spread stuff to keep RG3 kind of happy and play to his strengths. And that was a really interesting look at how he could even morph in that way.
Well, Kyle and Mike deserves a lot of credit too. To me, deserve credit for influencing Coach Reed. When he got to Kansas City, he hired Chris Alt, who was Kaepernick's guy at Nevada that developed the pistol, and they started implementing that with Alex Smith. So I think just that, before he even got to Atlanta, was opening the eyes and the minds of all these offensive guys. I think it kind of changed football. Now, the pistol's not as people aren't. Maybe Lamar Jackson's a small handful of guys, and you need a specific quarterback. But he's had a big influence on the league for sure.
All right, let's go to the other side. You have Mahomes, and I almost feel like I've done this show before. I remember Denver getting ready for Seattle, and it was in New York. And everyone was talking about Denver and their offense. And
Didn't he throw 50 touchdowns that year or something?
And I was like...
Julius Thomas, Demaryius Thomas.
I remember the Bills' high-powered offense getting wrecked in the Super Bowl. I remember, Dan Marino getting wrecked in the Super Bowl. Nobody talks about the Niners' defense. The Niners' defense was sick back in the day. John Elway, who is arguably the best guy I've ever seen quarterback before Pat Mahomes or Aaron Rodgers. They go in the Super Bowl and they get wrecked. They'd come from behind and miracle win, but the team wasn't great. Is that a possibility? Maybe not getting wrecked, but the cliche is defense wins championships, and that's a really talented front seven and fast defense for the Niners. Are we kind of, because we love Mahomes so much, are we underselling the idea that defense does win championships?
I think historically, when you look back at Peyton's teams, his offensive lines weren't very good, and he could overcome them because he was so good at getting the ball out of his hands. The one thing Peyton does not have, if we use that Denver team as an example, that Mahomes does, is he can move around.
Yep.
So even if he is getting chased, he can kind of keep it alive with his feet. That's a huge element. I think the coaching element with Coach Reed is, I think it was Adam Gase, the offensive coordinator that year with John Fox.
Oh, okay, but I could do Belichick.
No, you could.
I could do Belichick when they played the Giants, right? Why did the Giants beat them? Because they could not protect
I think you're never going to go wrong if you always lean the best defense in the game. I just think that Mahomes and this offense top to bottom is somewhat of an outlier, especially the way they're playing. How many touchdowns did they score the last 2 games? 12? They scored 7 in a row, and then last week, was it 4 or 5? I mean, it's just – and it's been with ease.
Yes.
It's been – and I get these teams are a little flawed, but they are doing it like it looks like a preseason practice. And when this guy peaks – you're a little older than me. I mean, when that guy's on, I mean, he's right there with Elway or Favre,
so
right?
The Chiefs were playing the Chargers, first game of the season 2 years ago. And I was driving to coach an AAU game, and I'm pretty good friends with Tom Telesco, the general manager of the Chargers. So I called him to wish him luck. Like, hey, man, good luck. He's like, I screwed up. I go, what'd you do? He said, I knew Mahomes was going to be this. And Mahomes, remember, it only started one game before. Yeah. They'd seen the preseason tape or whatever.
It was the Denver game, the last game of Alex Smith last year, and he was awesome.
Yes. And he's like, listen, we're going to have to score 30 to win today.
Wasn't that game like 28-0 at half or something? Didn't the Chiefs score a bunch of points?
They scored a bunch of points. In retrospect, the Chargers dropped 4 balls in the end zone, right in their hands in the end zone, and they still came back and had a shot late.
It turns out the Chargers had a good team that year.
Yes.
They made the playoffs.
But it was more like this, at the time, kid has it. Has everything that you'd want. And sitting behind Alex Smith, he learned to become a pro. Refined some of the other kind of personal habits that weren't great, reportedly at Texas Tech. Just laziness things, just college kid stuff. Yeah. And, I mean, I don't know, are we watching the guy the best to ever do it? Are we watching the beginning of a guy that's the best to ever do it? Is that a crazy statement?
I don't think so at all. But, I mean,
got to do it first before we.
You got to do it. That there is. Wouldn't you say that the hardest thing to do is to sustain a super high level of play once you get really famous?
Yes.
Like, let's say he wins the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and he gets $40 million a year.
Yeah, and he'll get propped up as the best ever young player. Like, to me, if he can sustain that for like 10 years, that would be more incredible than this early run. Not that this early run hasn't been mind blowing, but like what makes Kobe or LeBron or Elway. I mean, if you can sustain, or Peyton or Tom, that's where it gets really hard. Because if you talk to Coach Reed right now, he speaks about Patrick Mahomes as glowingly as he can, as any young player that he's ever had.
Right.
And you just watch him the way he conducts himself. He's a really high-level guy. And I also think, and I use this comparison sometimes, everyone uses it now with the Warriors, but I think when you look at Stephen Clay, and one thing Andy, I think he mentioned this to Peter King last week, that him being around big leaguers, now it's a different sport, but still, being around the pros, you just look at it a little differently. You just kind of, there's an understanding. And I think you've seen that with Stephen Clay over the years, where they were completely unaffected by fame, money, that their work ethic elevated, right? And maybe, but sometimes it goes the other way. I've never been given $40 million.
Is Tyreek Hill his Clay?
Yeah, I think Tyreek and Kelsey together, because I think they're a unique. Tyreek is arguably one of the most unique players in the NFL history, because he's bigger, he's stronger than Deshaun, he's probably faster, he can do more, but having Kelsey over the middle, so you got a guy going deep and a guy going over the middle, and then they add all these 3 other track guys. I mean, it's just, I don't know. Have we ever seen an offense this fast out on grass?
On grass, no.
No. I mean, the Rams were fast, but I think if we did a race, I think these guys would smoke them. And those guys could fly. I mean, Torrey Holt.
Yeah, they didn't have a tight end, though.
They didn't have a tight end, but they had Marshall.
Right.
The Chiefs don't really have a running back.
Way better than anybody. Anybody.
Marshall's better than Kelsey and Hill. I mean, Marshall's one of the greatest players ever, right?
Yes. And they had
they
had the best left tackle in football.
That's what made the Chiefs.
But again, then we go back to the original premises.
Defense got them the second time, right?
Yes, right. They come and they play the Patriots, and the Patriots, they dink and dunk their way offensively and just manage the game. And then
the Titans game, what was the final score? It wasn't like 38-35.
Yeah.
So these games typically do not look 38-35.
Okay. Lastly, a couple of speed things here. Okay, who's the quarterback of the Raiders next year?
Well, if the thing with Rivers, he's not coming back, they will go heavy for him.
Really?
If you just the way Gruden's talked about him over the years, I think they want. I think Rivers and Brady, if either one of them Gruden can get, he would take over Carr. If he can't get those guys, Carr's back.
I was told that the Chargers have not made a decision on Rivers yet.
Yeah, I mean, I can't see Dean Spanos just letting him walk for nothing. That's not really their style.
They may have made an offer and he balked at it, but I don't think they have not made a decision yet.
Would they franchise him though? Do they want to do that?
I do not believe in his contract he can be franchised.
Gotcha.
And then they got the Melvin Gordon thing.
Do you think he wants out?
I don't know. Because
he's a pretty loyal guy.
I think
the Chargers mean something to him.
I think he was really frustrated by last year, but I think there's also a level of accountability. Like, he was bad.
He was.
The Raider thing was a joke, dude. When he 0 for 8 in that last drive,
they didn't move 5 yards.
But he had guys open.
I know.
He kept trying to get chunk plays, and he didn't have to. It made no sense.
It's hard for me to feel sympathy this year, just in the sense they did have a lot of weapons for him to throw to.
More than anybody else. I think they had the best weaponry. I know you get more speed in Kansas City, but the best weaponry in the NFL when Melvin was right. Okay, Jameis Winston, where's he quarterback next year?
Well, that's the other curveball would Arians want Rivers?
Yeah, Arians wants Rivers. Does Jameis go to Oakland?
I could see Gruden liking him.
I could see Gruden really liking him.
I could see him liking him a lot because he is an explosive player.
Any chance Brady leaves?
I can't see it. The more you see it.
Is this just a negotiation for another couple years of guaranteed money?
Yeah, but are they at the point where they got to do that type of stuff? Are we really at that level? I guess it's life and it's business, but God, it's Tom Brady. Now, the curveball with him is he's 43 years old. If you ask the head coach, you think the head coach would be okay with him leaving? I think he would.
Yes.
I think 100%. But is this his decision? Robert Kraft's already said we're going to keep him back. I think Bill would people always ask me, what would Bill do? I think he'd figure it out. He'd want that challenge.
Last thing, how concerned would you be if you're in that war room and you're the Dolphins and you've been waiting all this time for Tua, and they're like, what's a hip? Right, a hip with a quarterback. What's your level of concern?
Well, I think it's just an outlier injury. Yeah, I wouldn't feel good about it. The one guy I know about it ended his career. Now, they've been adamant that this injury was different. Bo played through it. Tua in the press conference was pretty comfortable, it looked like, saying that I'm going to be okay. And the doctors told me they never truly know till the 3-month mark. If he is healthy, to me, he's the number 2 quarterback off the board. I think when it's all said and done, if his hip checks out and the way Herbert just played at the Senior Bowl and that Rose Bowl, we're going to see 3 quarterbacks go in the top 5. And in some order, I don't think it's crazy that even the Redskins, I get Chase Young's just great pass rusher, maybe trade back a couple spots and still get Chase Young, and 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3.
Tua, Burrow goes to Cincy. Tua goes to the Dolphins.
They trade up, and then the Lions could take Herbert. Chargers could come up.
The Lions, what do they do with Stafford?
Well, he's back injury. He's been banged up. They got to win. I don't know. A little less likely because they were kind of mandated by the owner. They got to make the playoffs. But they could trade back, trade back a couple spots, accumulate some picks, try to make a run with Stafford. Do you think the Chargers like Herbert?
I do.
Who wouldn't? He's a high-level prospect.
Stud. He's a stud. He's exactly what they've kind of always described to me that they like.
To me, in a perfect world, you would have Herbert sit behind Rivers for a year.
I think that's their goal if they can have it. Is it gives
if
them
you kept
options.
Phillip in a good set of mind.
But they also they like Tyrod Taylor. They're like, look, if Tyrod Taylor was the starting quarterback for a year, we think we could still make the playoffs.
I'm going to disagree with that, but
well, the big thing that Phillip hurts you with,
he can move around with their offensive line.
Phillip Rivers cannot move at all.
At all. He's Eli.
At all. No, he said he's the worst. He's just not a good athlete. He tore his ACL, and now he's in his late 30s.
Yeah.
So, anyway, look, man, you had a great year. I love following you and hanging out with you.
I love hanging out with you too, Doug.
Love having you on.
Thanks, man.
Hey, what up? Doug Gottlieb here. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel here at Fox Sports Radio. You can catch my show, all the shows on Fox Sports Radio, unique interviews, strong takes, just interesting discussion on the sports topic of the day, of the week, of the month. It's all encompassing. It's everything you need right here on YouTube. Subscribe.